The rain fell in whispers, a soft curtain over the empty graveyard, as Evelyn stood alone by her grandmother's open grave. No one else came. Not her parents, not her cousins, not a single soul from the sprawling family that once filled Grandma Rose's farmhouse with laughter. Only Evelyn, the outcast, the one they'd shunned for loving a woman, held vigil as the coffin was lowered into the earth. She clutched Clara's hand, her anchor in the storm of grief and betrayal. At 28, Evelyn felt the weight of years spent fighting for acceptance, her chestnut hair damp against her forehead, her heart raw from the silence of her family. Clara, 2 years older, stood steady beside her, blonde hair catching the fading light, her presence a quiet promise that Evelyn wasn't alone. Not today, not ever. Grandma Rose had been Evelyn's refuge, the only one who never judged her for who she loved. Her small farmhouse in upstate New York was a sanctuary where Evelyn could be herself, where she and Clara could steal kisses on the porch swing without fear. But now Rose was gone, and the family's absence at her funeral felt like a final cruel rejection. Not just of Evelyn, but of the woman who'd raised them all. The priest's voice droned through the drizzle, but Evelyn barely heard him. Her mind was on the will, the one Rose had mentioned in a letter weeks before her death. "It's all arranged, Evie," she'd written in her shaky script. "You'll see when I'm gone. They'll regret turning their backs." Evelyn hadn't thought much of it then. Rose was always dramatic, always protective. But now, standing by the grave, a spark of curiosity flickered through her sorrow. What had Grandma done? Clara squeezed her hand, pulling her back to the moment. "You okay?" she whispered, her voice a warm thread in the cold air. Evelyn nodded, though her chest ached. She wasn't okay, not yet, but Clara's presence made it bearable. They'd met 3 years ago at a bookstore in Albany, bonding over dog-eared poetry collections and shared dreams of a life unapologetically their own. Clara, with her quiet strength and fierce loyalty, had become Evelyn's home when her family cast her out. As the priest finished, the gravediggers began their work, and Evelyn's gaze drifted to the horizon. The family would come tomorrow, she knew. Her parents, her aunts, her cousins, all those who'd ignored Rose's final days but would never miss a chance at her estate. Rose's farm was worth millions, its sprawling acres a developer's dream. They'd show up for the will reading, expecting their share, oblivious to the woman who'd raised them. Evelyn's stomach twisted at the thought. "Let's go," Clara said softly, tugging her toward the car. "You don't need to stay for this part." But Evelyn lingered, her eyes on the gravestone. Rose Marie Caldwell, beloved mother and grandmother. No mention of the family who'd abandoned her. No mention of the love she'd poured into Evelyn, the only one who'd bothered to show up. Back at the farmhouse, the air was thick with memories. The creaky wooden floors, the faded floral curtains, the scent of lavender and old books. Every corner held Rose's spirit. Evelyn sank onto the couch, clutching a photo of her and Rose from years ago, her teenage self grinning beside her grandmother's warm smile. Clara sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "She loved you so much," Clara said. "More than any of them deserved." Evelyn's throat tightened. "Why didn't they come?" she whispered. She was their mother, their grandmother. How could they just not care? Clara didn't answer right away, just held her closer, letting the silence speak. It was a question without an answer, a wound that wouldn't heal easily. The next morning the family arrived, just as Evelyn had predicted. Cars lined the gravel driveway, her parents' sleek SUV, her Aunt Linda's minivan, her cousin Mark's overpriced sports car. They poured into the farmhouse, their voices loud and entitled, as if they hadn't ignored Rose's calls for months. Evelyn stood in the kitchen, gripping a mug of coffee, her heart pounding as Clara stood protectively by her side. "Evelyn," her mother Diane said coolly, barely meeting her eyes, "I didn't expect you here. Where else would I be?" Evelyn shot back, her voice sharp. "I was at her funeral. Where were you?" Diane's lips thinned, but she said nothing, brushing past to join the others in the living room. Evelyn's father, Tom, followed, his gaze flickering to Clara with a familiar flicker of disapproval. The rest of the family, Linda, Mark, and a handful of cousins, barely acknowledged her, their chatter focused on the will. "The farm's gotta be worth at least $5 million, Mark said loudly, leaning back in Rose's favorite armchair. "Split it up, we're all set." Evelyn's blood boiled, but Clara's hand on her arm kept her grounded. "Let them talk," Clara murmured. "They'll see soon enough." The lawyer, a wiry man named Mr. Grayson, arrived promptly at 10. He sat up at the dining table, his briefcase snapping open with a sound that silenced the room. Evelyn sat at the far end, Clara beside her, as the family crowded in, their eyes gleaming with greed. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "Rose Caldwell's will is straightforward," he began. "But it may surprise some of you." Evelyn's heart raced. She could feel her family's eyes on her, their curiosity tinged with resentment. They'd always seen her as the black sheep, the one who'd chosen a life they couldn't accept. But Rose had never cared about that. Rose had seen her, truly seen her, and loved her without condition. Mr. Grayson began reading. "To my family, my children and grandchildren excepting Evelyn Marie Caldwell, I leave my gratitude for the memories we shared, and my hope that you find peace in your choices." The room stilled, confusion rippling through the air. "To Evelyn," he continued, "I leave my entire estate, the farmhouse, the land and all my assets to be hers alone, in recognition of her unwavering love and loyalty." Gasps erupted. Diane's face paled and Mark slammed a fist on the table. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "She can't do that." "She already did," Mr. Grayson said calmly, producing the document. "It's ironclad. Rose was of sound mind, and her wishes are clear." Evelyn's hands trembled as she processed the words. The farm, Rose's legacy, her heart was hers. She looked at Clara, whose eyes shone with pride and love. The family's outrage filled the room, their voices rising in a cacophony of disbelief and anger. But Evelyn felt something else. A quiet strength, a sense of justice. Rose had chosen her not because of wealth but because of love. The room exploded into chaos. Mark's face was red, his voice booming over the others. "This is a joke. Evelyn doesn't deserve it. She's barely family." Her mother, Diane, clutched her purse, her lips trembling as she muttered about fairness. Aunt Linda was already on her phone, likely calling a lawyer, while Evelyn's cousins exchanged furious glances. Evelyn sat frozen, her heart pounding, as Clara's hand found hers under the table, grounding her in the storm. Mr. Grayson raised a hand for silence, but it took several minutes for the family to quiet down. "There's more," he said, his voice steady. "Rose left a letter to be read alongside the will." He pulled a sealed envelope from his briefcase, breaking the wax with a deliberate snap. The family leaned forward, their anger momentarily replaced by curiosity. Evelyn's stomach churned. She hadn't known about a letter. "My dear family," Mr. Grayson began, reading Rose's words. "If you're hearing this, I'm gone, and I hope you're all together, though I suspect only Evelyn showed up to say goodbye. You've made your choices and I've made mine. This farm, this land was built on love, love you turned away from when you turned away from Evelyn. She's the only one who ever understood what family means. This is my gift to her, and my lesson to you." The words hit like a thunderclap. Diane's face crumpled and Mark's jaw tightened, but no one spoke. Evelyn felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness but from the weight of Rose's love, her fierce defense even from beyond the grave. Clara squeezed her hand tighter, whispering, "She was so proud of you." Mark broke the silence, his voice venomous. "This is manipulation. She's punishing us because of her." He jabbed a finger at Evelyn, who flinched but held her ground. "You think you're so special, don't you? Prancing around with your girlfriend, acting like you're better than us." "Enough," Clara snapped, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You don't get to talk to her like that. Not here, not in Rose's house." Mark sneered, but Diane grabbed his arm, hissing, "Stop it, Mark. You're making it worse." Evelyn's father, Tom, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. "Evelyn," he said, his voice low, "you know this isn't right. That farm belongs to all of us." Rose wasn't thinking straight. Evelyn's chest tightened, old wounds reopening. Her father had never accepted her, not since she came out at 19. His disapproval had been quiet but constant, a cold distance that hurt more than outright rejection. "She was thinking straighter than any of you," Evelyn said, her voice trembling but firm. "She was the only one who showed up for me, and I was the only one who showed up for her." The room fell silent again, the truth hanging heavy. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. "There's one final stipulation," he said. "Evelyn, Rose requests that you live on the farm for at least 1 year before deciding its future. She believed it would help you find your path." Evelyn nodded, her mind racing. Live here. She and Clara had their life in Albany. A small apartment, their jobs, their routines. The farm was beautiful but isolated, a world away from the city. Yet the thought of staying, of honoring Rose's wish, felt right. She glanced at Clara, who gave her a small, encouraging smile. The family dispersed soon after, their anger simmering but impotent. They'd fight the will, Evelyn knew. Mark was already talking about lawsuits, but Rose's lawyer was confident. "She planned this carefully," Mr. Grayson told Evelyn privately. "She wanted you to have everything." That night, Evelyn and Clara stayed in Rose's old bedroom, the quilt on the bed still smelling faintly of lavender. They lay side by side, the weight of the day settling over them. "What do you think?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Could we do it? Live here?" Clara turned to her, her blue eyes soft in the moonlight. "I think we could do anything as long as we're together." She brushed a strand of hair from Evelyn's face, her touch gentle but electric. "This place, it's Rose's love letter to you. Maybe it could be our home, too." Evelyn's heart swelled, and for the first time that day she smiled. They kissed slow and tender, the kind of kiss that felt like a promise. But as they drifted to sleep, Evelyn couldn't shake a nagging fear. The family wouldn't let this go easily. They'd come for the farm, for Rose's legacy, and she'd have to fight to keep it. The next morning, they woke to the sound of birds and the soft creak of the farmhouse settling. Clara made coffee and they sat on the porch swing, watching the mist rise from the fields. "It's beautiful here," Clara said, her voice wistful. "But it's going to be a battle, isn't it?" Evelyn nodded. "They'll try to take it. Mark especially. He's always been about the money." She thought of her cousin, his flashy car and entitled swagger. He'd never cared about Rose, only what she could give him. "We'll fight them," Clara said, her tone fierce. "This is yours, Evie. Rose gave it to you because she trusted you." The words steadied her, but the weight of the future loomed. They spent the day exploring the farm. Its creaky barn, the apple orchard, the pond where Evelyn used to catch frogs as a kid. Every corner held a memory, a piece of Rose's love. But it also held questions. Could they make a life here? Could they afford to maintain it? And what did Rose mean by finding her path? As evening fell, Evelyn found a box in Rose's study, tucked under her desk. Inside were letters, photos, and a journal, all addressed to her. She opened the journal, her hands shaking, and began to read. Rose's words spilled across the pages, recounting stories of her own life, her struggles, her loves, her regrets. One entry stood out. "Evie, you're stronger than you know. This farm is your roots, but it's also your wings. Don't let them clip them." Tears streamed down Evelyn's face as she read, Clara's arm around her. Rose had known the fight Evelyn would face, known the love she'd need to hold on to. The journal was a map, a guide to the year ahead. And as Evelyn closed it, she felt a fire kindle inside her. She'd fight for this farm, for Rose, for herself. The days after the will reading blurred into a tense rhythm. Evelyn and Clara decided to stay at the farm for a week, sorting through Rose's belongings and planning their next steps. The farmhouse, with its sagging porch and peeling paint, felt like a living thing, whispering memories in every creak. But the family's shadow loomed. Mark called daily, his voicemails a mix of threats and false sweetness, urging Evelyn to be reasonable and share the estate. Diane sent a curt email, claiming Rose had been manipulated. Evelyn deleted it, her hands shaking with anger. Clara was her rock, handling the practicalities, calling contractors to assess the farm's condition, researching property laws, even cooking dinner when Evelyn was too overwhelmed. One evening, as they ate spaghetti by candlelight, Clara reached across the table, her fingers brushing Evelyn's. "We're going to make this work," she said. "Not just for Rose, but for us." Evelyn wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at her. The farm was a gift, but also a burden. Taxes, upkeep, the looming threat of a lawsuit. It was a lot for two women barely scraping by in their city jobs. Clara worked as a graphic designer, Evelyn as a librarian. Neither had the kind of money to maintain a sprawling estate. Yet the thought of selling felt like betraying Rose. One morning, while sorting through Rose's attic, Evelyn found a locked trunk. Inside, beneath layers of old quilts, was a collection of love letters. Yellowed, tied with a ribbon, addressed to someone named Margaret. The handwriting was Rose's, but younger, more urgent. Evelyn read one, her breath catching. Margaret, my heart is yours, though the world won't let us be. I'll love you always, in secret if I must. Evelyn sat back, stunned. Rose had never spoken of Margaret, never hinted at a love like this. The letters spanned years from the 1950s to the early 60s, each one a piece of a hidden life. Clara joined her, reading over her shoulder, her eyes wide. Your grandmother, she was like us, Clara whispered. She loved a woman. The discovery reframed everything. Rose's fierce defense of Evelyn, her rejection of the family's judgment. It wasn't just grandmotherly love. It was personal. She'd lived a life of secrets, her own love stifled by the times. The farm, Evelyn realized, wasn't just a home. It was Rose's sanctuary, the place she built to escape a world that wouldn't accept her. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch, the journal open in her lap, Rose's words echoing in her mind. Clara joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both. She gave you this place because she knew you'd understand, Clara said. You're carrying her story now, too. The next day, Mark showed up unannounced, his sports car kicking up dust in the driveway. He strode into the farmhouse like he owned it, his eyes scanning the room for anything of value. Evelyn, he said, his tone falsely cordial, let's talk business. You can't handle this place. Sell it, split the money, and we all walk away happy. Evelyn's jaw tightened. This isn't about money, she said. It's about Grandma. She wanted me to have it. Mark laughed, a harsh grating sound. She was old, Evie. Confused. You really think she'd choose you over all of us? Clara stepped forward, her voice icy. She did choose her. And you're not welcome here unless you respect that. Mark's smile vanished. You'll regret this, he said, pointing at Evelyn. I'm not letting some dyke take what's mine. The word hit like a slap and Evelyn flinched, but Clara didn't back down. She grabbed Mark's arm, steering him toward the door. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Now. He left, but not before spitting on the porch. Evelyn's hand shook as she closed the door, tears burning her eyes. Clara pulled her into a hug, holding her tight. He's wrong, she whispered. You're not taking anything. You're honoring her. The encounter lit a fire in Evelyn. She and Clara dove into Rose's journal and letters, piecing together her life with Margaret. They learned Margaret had been a schoolteacher, forced to leave town when rumors of their relationship spread. Rose stayed, raising her family, but never forgot her. The farm, Evelyn realized, was where Rose had grieved, where she poured her heart into the land. They decided to stay longer, taking leave from their jobs. The farm needed work. Leaky pipes, a sagging roof, but every repair felt like a promise to Rose. Neighbors stopped by, older folks who'd known Rose, sharing stories of her kindness, her stubborn streak. One, an elderly man named Henry, mentioned Margaret's family still lived nearby. She passed years ago, he said, but her niece might know more. Evelyn's heart raced. Could Margaret's family hold answers? She and Clara tracked down the niece, a woman named Susan, who invited them to her home in a nearby town. Susan, in her 60s, had a box of Margaret's things, photos, a locket, a few letters from Rose. They loved each other, Susan said, her voice soft. But it was a different time. Margaret never got over leaving Rose. The visit was a revelation. Evelyn felt closer to Rose than ever, her grandmother's love story mirroring her own. She and Clara returned to the farm with renewed purpose. They'd fight for it, not just for themselves but for Rose and Margaret, for the love they'd been denied. But the fight was far from over. Mark's lawyer sent a letter, claiming Rose's will was invalid due to undue influence. The family was rallying, their greed outweighing their shame. Evelyn knew the battle ahead would test her, but with Clara by her side and Rose's legacy in her heart, she was ready. The lawsuit hit like a tidal wave. Mark's lawyer filed a motion to contest the will, claiming Rose had been coerced by Evelyn during her final months. The accusation stung, twisting the knife of her family's betrayal. Evelyn had spent those months by Rose's side, reading to her, cooking her favorite meals, holding her hand through the pain of illness. To have that love weaponized against her was almost too much to bear. Clara took charge, researching legal aid and finding a local attorney, Ms. Harper, who specialized in estate disputes. Harper was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with a sharp mind and a passion for justice. "They've got no case," she told Evelyn and Clara over coffee at the farmhouse. "Rose's will is airtight, and her letter seals it. But they'll drag this out to bleed you dry." Evelyn's stomach sank. Legal fees would eat into their savings, and the farm's upkeep was already a strain. Clara, ever practical, suggested renting out part of the land to local farmers, a move that could generate income while they fought. Evelyn agreed, though it felt like letting strangers into Rose's heart. They threw themselves into the farm, planting a small vegetable garden and repairing the barn. The work was grueling but grounding. Each nail hammered a defiance against her family's greed. Neighbors pitched in, bringing tools or casseroles, their support a quiet rebuke to the family's absence. Evelyn felt Rose's presence in every task, her grandmother's strength flowing through her. One evening, as they painted the porch, Clara paused, paintbrush in hand. "What if we turned this place into something more?" she asked. "A community space, maybe, for people like us who need a safe place." Evelyn's breath caught. The idea sparked something in her. A vision of the farm as a haven, not just for them, but for others who'd been cast out. They started small, hosting a potluck for local queer folks, many of whom had known Rose. The event was a success, the farmhouse alive with laughter and music for the first time since Rose's death. Evelyn felt her grandmother's spirit in the room, smiling down on them. But the joy was short-lived. Mark's lawyer sent a new letter, demanding access to the farm for an inspection to assess its value. "They're stalling," Harper said at their next meeting. "They want to wear you down." Evelyn's resolve hardened. She wasn't just fighting for the farm now. She was fighting for the life she and Clara could build here, for the community they could create. Clara dug deeper into Rose's journal, finding entries about the farm's history. It had been a stop on the Underground Railroad, a place of refuge long before Rose's time. The discovery fueled their vision. They began researching grants for historic preservation, hoping to fund repairs and expand their plans. But the legal battle loomed, a constant shadow. One night, Evelyn woke to a crash outside. Heart pounding, she and Clara grabbed flashlights and ran to the barn, finding the door splintered, tools scattered. Someone had broken in. Clara called the police while Evelyn surveyed the damage, her fear turning to fury. She knew who was behind it, Mark or someone he'd hired. The police found no evidence, but the message was clear. Her family would stop at nothing. Evelyn's resolve wavered, the weight of the fight pressing down. Clara sensed it, pulling her close under the stars. "We're not giving up," she said fiercely. "This is our home now. Rose's home. They don't get to take that from us." The next day, they installed security cameras and reinforced the barn. Evelyn wrote to Susan, Margaret's niece, asking for more stories about Rose's past. Susan sent a package with a photo of Rose and Margaret, young and radiant, standing by the farm's pond. On the back, in Rose's handwriting, was a single line: "Our love will outlast them all." Evelyn framed the photo, hanging it in the living room. It became her talisman, a reminder of why she was fighting. She and Clara worked tirelessly, balancing the farm's needs with the legal battle. Harper uncovered evidence that Mark had been pressuring Rose for years to sell the land, undermining his claim of undue influence. As winter approached, the farm transformed. The garden yielded its first harvest, and the potlucks grew, drawing queer youth from nearby towns. Evelyn and Clara began planning a summer camp, a place where kids could feel safe and seen. The vision was taking shape, but the lawsuit dragged on, draining their energy and resources. One evening, Clara found Evelyn staring at the photo of Rose and Margaret, tears in her eyes. "What if we lose?" Evelyn whispered. Clara knelt beside her, taking her hands. "We won't," she said. "But even if we did, we'd still have each other. And that's what Rose wanted most, for you to be loved no matter what." Evelyn nodded, her heart steadying. They kissed, the warmth of Clara's love chasing away the cold. The fight wasn't over, but they were ready for the next round, armed with Rose's legacy and their own unbreakable bond. The courtroom was small, its wooden benches worn from years of disputes, but to Evelyn it felt like a battlefield. The hearing to contest Rose's will had finally arrived. 6 months after her funeral, Evelyn sat beside Clara, her hands clasped tightly, as Miss Harper laid out their case. The family, Mark, Diane, Linda, and a few cousins, sat across the room, their faces a mix of defiance and desperation. Harper was relentless, presenting Rose's journal, her letters to Margaret, and testimony from neighbors who'd seen Evelyn's devotion to her grandmother. Rose Caldwell knew exactly what she was doing, Harper said, her voice ringing with conviction. She chose Evelyn because Evelyn chose her, when none of you did. Mark's lawyer countered with accusations of coercion, painting Evelyn as a manipulative opportunist. It was a lie, but it hurt all the same. Evelyn's hand shook until Clara leaned close, whispering, "You're stronger than their words." The turning point came when Harper introduced a video Rose had recorded a month before her death. The family hadn't known it existed. Even Evelyn was surprised. On the screen, Rose sat in her rocking chair, frail but fierce, her eyes bright with purpose. "My family thinks they can claim what's mine because they share my blood," she said. "But Evelyn shares my heart. She's the only one who loved me without condition, who loved this farm for what it is, not what it's worth. This is my choice, and I'll be damned if anyone takes it from her." The room was silent as the video ended. Diane looked away, tears in her eyes, while Mark's face hardened. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair, took notes, her expression unreadable. Evelyn felt a flicker of hope, but she knew the fight wasn't over. Outside, as they waited for the judge's ruling, Clara pulled Evelyn into a quiet corner. "No matter what happens," she said, "we've already won. We've built something here, something Rose would be proud of." Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. The farm was no longer just land. It was a community, a sanctuary, a testament to love that refused to be silenced. The judge's ruling came a week later. Rose's will stood. The family's claims were dismissed, their evidence too weak to overturn her wishes. Mark stormed out, vowing to appeal, but Harper was confident he'd fail. "It's over," she told Evelyn and Clara. "The farm is yours." They returned to the farmhouse, the weight of the battle lifting but leaving scars. Evelyn stood in the living room, the photo of Rose and Margaret watching over her. She thought of her grandmother's secret love, her quiet courage, and felt a responsibility to carry it forward. Over the next months, Evelyn and Clara poured their hearts into the farm. They secured a grant to restore the barn, turning it into a community center for queer youth. The summer camp launched, filled with laughter and stories, kids finding refuge where Rose once had. Neighbors became family, their support a reminder that love could be chosen, not just inherited. One spring evening, Evelyn and Clara stood by the pond, the same spot where Rose and Margaret had once dreamed of a life together. Clara took Evelyn's hand, slipping a simple silver ring onto her finger. "Marry me," she said, her voice soft but sure. "Here on this land with Rose's blessing." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but she laughed, pulling Clara close. "Yes," she whispered, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like home. They married that summer, the farm alive with flowers and friends, the community they'd built celebrating their love. The family never returned, their absence a quiet victory. Evelyn didn't need their approval anymore. She had Clara, the farm, and Rose's legacy. The will had shaken them, but it had also set Evelyn free, showing her that family wasn't blood. It was love, fierce and unyielding, that outlasted everything. As they danced under the stars, Evelyn felt Rose's presence, her grandmother's voice whispering through the trees. "You did it, Evie. You made it yours." And she had not just the farm but a life built on love, a legacy that would live on.